What's going on, true Blazer fans? It's Tori, and welcome to the weekly recap for the action this past week. This is going to be part 1. Part 2 will be either coming later tonight or tomorrow. I'm just swamped with video stuff right now, so I don't know if I'll be able to get it out tonight. But anyway, when we were looking at the 7-game road trip, I was hoping 4-3 or something like that. This was a defining road trip. Lots of tough teams, East Coast road trip, lots of travel miles, and I figured this was going to be a road trip that either made our season and ended up catapulting us into the 3 seed ahead of OKC, or it was going to be a road trip that could potentially have lost us home court advantage. Right now, it looks like it's catapulting us into that 3 seed because we are 5-1, with the only game we lost being against the Toronto Raptors when Kawhi hit a game winner, a game that we definitely could have won. It would have been awesome to go 7-0 on this road trip, but I can't complain about where we are right now. We just got to take care of business against the Memphis Grizzlies in our next game. That's a game we should win. We should finish up this road trip 6-1, and then we go into OKC, and hopefully we beat them and we put them behind us for good, because they have a very hard schedule the rest of the season, and we have a very easy one after that OKC game. Right now, I think the 2 seed is a legitimate possibility because Denver has a very road heavy, very hard schedule to end the season, and Denver is a team that plays a lot better at home because they have that cheat code, as Evan Turner would call it. They have that elevation. They're not the same team on the road, and they're going to struggle playing against some of these tough teams that they have lined up for them, and then we play them twice to end the season. If we are within 2 games of them, then we have a chance to sweep them over those final 2 games, and then we'd be tied with them for the 2 seed. We'd need to gain another game on them over the last couple games of the season because they will have the tiebreaker due to division record. But as I record this, they're only 3.5 games in front of us, and they play the Spurs tonight, and that might be a game they might lose. If they lose, they'd only be 3 games ahead of us. If we can get within 1 game of them going into those final 2 games against them to end the season, sweeping them would put us into the 2 seed. I think it's a real possibility. I would love to have the 2 seed go up against the Denver Nuggets in the second round. If we made it and go up against Denver with home court advantage, we would be looking at a legit chance to make the Western Conference Finals, a better chance than we've had in a decade and a half. But anyway, that's looking ahead. Let's look behind us. Let's recap this past week. I left you guys off right before the Cleveland Cavaliers game. Now, in my weekly recap last week, I talked at length about Maurice Harkless and the treatment he was getting from Blazer fans and how he was struggling this season, but I thought that he could turn it around. And then he helped me out, and he turned it around because Maurice Harkless has played great over these past 4 games. He's playing great defensively. He's really locked in on that end. He's getting a ton of deflections. I want you next game to try and count his deflections, blocks, just when he gets a hand on the ball defensively, because there's many times where he might not get a steal, but he completely disrupts an offense with the deflection. The offense ends up out of its set, and the offense ends up having to take an improvised shot that's not as good as what they would have gotten if Maurice Harkless wasn't playing great defense. Offensively, he's posting up smaller guards really well. He's finishing well inside. He's running the floor. He's not shooting many threes, but that's fine. He's taking the shots that he should take, and he's taking the shots that are good shots for him, and he's converting on a pretty high rate on them. This isn't quite the same Maurice Harkless that we saw after the All-Star break last year. That Maurice Harkless was shooting threes at about a 50% clip and actually shooting them on a little bit of volume, but everything else that he's doing reminds me a lot of the way that he was playing after the All-Star break, where he really turned it on and helped us get that 13-game winning streak. Right now, he's helped us to 6 wins and 7 games, and he's helped us to a 5-1 road trip. Harkless is a guy who's going to be crucial going up against the best wings in the league, the guys like Paul George, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, etc. And the fact that he's really turning it around right now, and the fact that he finally looks healthy and looks to have that energy that he needs to play with, it's very promising going into the rest of the season. It's going to be very promising going to the playoffs, where we definitely need him. Now jumping into CJ McCollum, because talking about him will help me recap a couple of these these past games. CJ McCollum was our offense against the Cleveland Cavaliers. He had 35 points if I'm not mistaken, and he was the reason we won that game because we actually struggled a bit with putting away the Cleveland Cavaliers. He also had a very good game against Toronto where he hit an efficient 6 or 7 threes, and he had a very high scoring output, and he kept us in that game. Now, I was slightly frustrated in the Toronto game because while he was having a great scoring night, he made a few bad decisions, not making the right open pass to a good shooter on the perimeter and forcing a shot. There were times where he made a bucket like that, but it wasn't the right play to make. A couple times where he jumped past, a couple bad turnovers, and then he was getting lost off the ball defensively way too much for my liking, and it was just frustrating because if he just did all those things at just a mediocre level, we'd probably win that game. And honestly, I'm not blaming CJ at all. His shooting and scoring definitely kept us in that game. It's just a little frustrating when he can't do the simple stuff to go along with him doing the hard things like hitting contested fadeaway threes. It makes it even more frustrating when he does have a bad scoring night like against the Charlotte Hornets where his shot selection wasn't too good. He only had 6 points on 13 shots. Both of those were threes, so he was 2 for 13 from the field. That's not good, but he definitely has had some good performances lately, so it's not like how it was earlier in the season when he was really struggling consistently. Now he's putting together great games with very bad games. That Toronto game was definitely a great game. Now, in regards to that Boston game, before that Toronto game, that Boston game was probably one of our best wins of the year, even though the Celtics are kind of dysfunctional right now. After that game, all you heard in the national media was about how bad the Celtics were. Still no talk about our Portland Trail Blazers, and there probably still won't be any talk about our Blazers until the playoffs, and then it will be all about how we lost and got swept last year. We're definitely getting disrespected, but that Celtics game showed me that this team can still play good defense. They had Enes Kanter there in the lineup, and we'll talk about him more in a little bit, but the defense was still very, very solid. Boston did miss shots here and there, shots that they normally make, but anytime you can hold a good team to 92 points is very promising. Finally, the last part of part 1 of this weekly recap, we're going to talk about Enes Kanter, and defensively, he's exactly what he was talked about to be. He's not good, and that sucks because honestly, offensively, he's one great player. I just wish he was able to guard the pick and roll a little bit better, be a little bit more of a force defending the low post, but he is exactly what we signed up for. I do really like the way the bench lineup continues to play with him in the game. It plays a lot calmer style of basketball, and even though it gives up points at a little bit higher rate than I'd like, offensively it doesn't look anywhere near as incompetent as it was. Now we'll see how things look with Evan Turner back in the lineup and Evan Turner playing with Enes Kanter because we haven't really seen that yet. We'll also see if Stotts continues to use Zach Collins next to Enes Kanter to try and make up for his deficiencies. Zach didn't really do that in the Charlotte game, but I think we need to see them a little bit more together to be able to judge just how good of a fit they are for each other. I still think Zach Collins could do a really good job as a weak side shot blocker, guarding power forwards but rotating over in time to protect the rim a little bit because that obviously is not Enes Kanter's strong suit. With Evan Turner coming back, we'll see how many minutes Curry gets, or we'll see if Evan Turner simply isn't in the rotation. I'm definitely very curious to see what Stotts does with these guys in their minutes. It's definitely not going to be an easy decision for him, and we'll see which one he makes. Hopefully it pans out. We'll see if he continues to stagger Dame and CJ like he has been lately. He's kind of half staggering them right now, where for 3 or 4 minutes each half, neither of them is on the floor, but then for about another 3 or 4 minutes each half, one of them is on the floor. We'll see what he decides to do. With Turner back, he might go back to an all-bench unit like he did to start the season, but we'll see. So that's all I got for part 1, True Blazer fans. In part 2, I will talk about Damian Lillard and what I think about his play lately. He seems to kind of be taking a step back. I'll talk about that. And then most importantly, I'll talk about why I think Rodney Hood had struggled until that Charlotte game, and then why I think he broke out during that Charlotte game, and what it could mean going forward. So definitely check out part 2. That wraps up part 1, so I'll see you True Blazer fans later. This has been Tori. Have a good week ahead. Peace out. Go Blazers.